TPCSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app.
2,000 years long, we will never settle. Hard days, no way, with a heavy metal. No time, no veil, won't stop here. Like a torch to a flame when it burns hot. We won't stop. Come on, take me higher.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it's that time of the week for the closing bell with Ron Marmalefsky at Ron A Sports. Go follow him on Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it today, at Ron A Sports. Amazing content. Work second to none. Good friend and colleague. First and foremost, a shout out to our proud sponsor and partnerships. You saw it, WagerWire. Head on over to Google Play, download the app. It's free. I promise it'll be one of your most used apps moving forward. Viva Tequila Seltzer, CT Bets, team, family, second to none. Go try a Viva Tequila Seltzer where you get adult beverages locally at the Garden. If you're going to the Bruins Canadians tonight, make sure you get a Viva. The East Coast is cuckoo for coconut. And, of course, Atlanta Steak and Seafood. Jump on over to Facebook. Go follow Terry Smith. Introduce yourself. Tell him JD from ECSI sent you. Head on over to Atlanta Steak and Seafood website. Place an order. If you are ordering a box of steaks, doesn't matter, 8 ounce, 10 ounce, 12 ounce, 16 ounce. At checkout, use the promo code STRIP, STRIP, get $25 off from Mr. Terry Smith himself. So without further ado, the one and only Mr. Ron Marmalefsky.
Well, Jeff, I got to tell you, I look at those pictures of the steaks, and I may have to leave your show early because they sure look good. But so does the college football slate. So I'm going to stay around to talk football with you.
Well, I tell you, I made sure I changed the batteries in the remote. My butt is parked, whether it's in the studio, the office, or in front of the big screen. A slate second to none. We had this weekend circled. Of course, Oregon, Ohio State is the supposed premier game, but you got Texas, Oklahoma, the Red Rifle rivalry, as we used to call it, and still will call it there. Penn State travels to USC, as Keith Jackson would say way back in the day. The granddaddy of them all back then used to be the Rose Bowl. And there's a list of others. Before we dive into that slate, we talk about carnage. That goes hand in hand with the NFL. Well, again, in college football, the almighty Alabama Crimson Tide, who had just knocked off Georgia the week before in an instant classic there, a tale of two halves. 21-point favorites at Vanderbilt. They not only didn't cover, they lost the game outright, Ron.
Well, two words come to mind. Jerry Kill. He was a program builder wherever he went. His last stop, 2023, was New Mexico State, who's 1-4 or 1-5 this week after losing badly last night. But last year they were a 10-win team because Jerry Kill was their head coach, and their quarterback is now the Vanderbilt quarterback. And Jerry Kill, you know where he's at now? He's an advisor at Vanderbilt. He made a call to this quarterback, Pavia, and he said, "You want to come with me to the SEC?" Pavia said, "Yes, I'm coming to the SEC." Heard a good interview with him about the relationship with him and Jerry Kill. And he brought a new dynamic that Vanderbilt hasn't seen in a while. Careful quarterback, winning quarterback, just gets the most out of his abilities. Not a very tall guy. And what a great job they did last week against Alabama.
I was talking to Paul Stone this morning, and it was funny. I said to him, I have a good friend in Nashville downtown, and he sends me a picture and a little video at a snapshot Saturday night. Goes, "Hey, you're not going to believe this, but the goalposts are walking down the street." And hats off to Vanderbilt. One of the, if not the hardest schools to get into. And as Nick Saban said a handful of weeks ago, always was, quote unquote, the doormat of the SEC, but not so fast there, Mr. Saban and the Crimson Tide. The other shocker to me wasn't much of a shocker. The Tennessee Vols, known for their offense, great quarterback with Nico, this year a defense, but they went into Fayetteville at night, and it had been a great upset spot for the Razorbacks. Great hard-fought battle back and forth, but at the end, the Razorbacks, 14-point underdogs, not only covered the game, won the game outright.
Yeah, and it wasn't a fluky win because Arkansas, the parts I saw, they left some points on the table. So Arkansas deserved the win. They had to work hard for it at the end. They had a couple of blown games earlier, and you thought, oh, here we go again. Arkansas is going to lose another close one. But this time they pulled through. Tennessee's offense, it looks the part, but it's not that kind of high-powered offense we saw a couple of years ago. They're still finding their rhythm. Still a lot of important games to go, but with Missouri losing, Tennessee losing, Alabama losing, starting to think that the SEC, which hypes itself up at the slightest drop of a hat, maybe they're not quite up to the level that we thought they would be. And I know these are all conference games, but still, I don't think other conferences should be that scared of the SEC the way they're beating each other right now and the way they're beating each other right now.
We talked backstage here, this is the year the 12 teams and the almighty of almighty are going to get in. And as you said backstage, the SEC probably thinking, pre-flop, we're going to get 6-7 teams in. Big Ten thinking the same thing here. Now, they're just beating each other up here. Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Ole Miss. You talked about Missouri. First road game, by the way, and boy, they got smacked by Texas A&M. All with one loss here. And I says, if the miracle ever happened this Saturday, Texas losing to Oklahoma, let's just say USC finds a way to beat Penn State. And then I'll say the Ducks beating Ohio State there. You're going to look from 1 through 9, and everyone's going to have one loss here.
It's really going to be crazy. And there's going to be some teams left out of the SEC championship. You can only have two teams in that. The Big Ten, the Big 12, which up until last week, I said, well, they're only going to get one team in. They're going to beat each other. Their power ratings aren't high enough. You never know right now if two teams can emerge. Maybe Iowa State, Kansas State at the end of the year. Maybe that's a game that one or both teams will find their way into the 12-team playoff because the SEC left the door open just a little bit.
I'm trying to find my picture because there's so many games here. I'm trying to make it easier on the eyes here. And of course, when we need to, here we go. All right. Week 7 matchups, Ohio State, Oregon, South Carolina, Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, Penn State, USC, Cal, Pitt, Florida, Tennessee, Ole Miss, LSU, Vanderbilt, UK, Iowa State at West Virginia, and Kansas State at Colorado. At Colorado. Which one of those, other than the Oregon game, intrigues you the most there?
Ooh, well, I don't usually watch Colorado games, but I am intrigued by Kansas State, Colorado as one of those games because Kansas State is putting up, I do a formula. So I correct for sacks, I correct for kneel downs and so on. I take the data beyond the box score. But so I have Kansas State running in excess of 8 yards per carry, and they're going to face a Colorado team that has exceeded expectations right now with their own run defense. They're going to get an awfully stiff test in this game. They're allowing about 4 yards per carry. I expect that they're going to allow much more than 4 yards per carry in this game. So it's up to Sanders and Hunter and everybody else on that team to put up points and to go toe-to-toe with Kansas State. Road game for Kansas State. That makes it a little bit more intriguing, but Kansas State off rest from Bill Snyder all the way to their current coach has been pretty impressive as well. I know Colorado's off rest as well. I find it a very intriguing game. I do favor Kansas State in that game, but if Colorado competes in this game and if they pull it off and if they win this game, they have to be taken seriously in the Big Ten and even in partly in the national picture. This is a pretty important game for Colorado. And it's important for Kansas State because they already have one loss in conference. BYU whipped them something like 32-9. Another surprise that you could chalk up for this year in college football. Every 10 or 12 years, you see topsy-turvy scores, and that's what's happening in 2024 right now. And so this is a pretty important game for both teams, and that intrigues me.
I'm going to pull a couple games up here just to see if any of them pique your interest. Iowa State traveling to West Virginia. Iowa State opened at 2.5, now 3.53. West Virginia went in to Oklahoma State. I was on the wrong side of that one. We had the Oklahoma State team total there. West Virginia just boat raced them. I think it's a great spot for Iowa State here, but I could be selling the Mountaineers, who get a night game at 8 p.m. Am I selling the West Virginia short here, Ron?
I wouldn't be surprised either way in this game. I like both coaches. I've always been a fan of the West Virginia coach, and I thought he was on danger of even getting fired before his breakthrough season last year. And Iowa State's coach, and especially their defensive coordinator, they're really top-notch. Expectations, when they're high at Iowa State, they tended to underperform. They were kind of high this year because they had so much returning talent in a nil transfer situation where not everybody gets to return a lot of talent, and Iowa State did return a lot of talent. And so far they're meeting expectations. I thought they got a real boost by finally beating rival Iowa. So it's kind of a toss-up game to me, but the data points me a little bit to West Virginia. Not necessarily a strong lean, or I don't even know if it'll make my play board. I have a little bit of lean to West Virginia in this game. I like their run-pass balance. I like what they bring to the table, but I think Iowa State, both teams are well coached. I think it's a very good game.
We'll scroll down here. If I know I didn't have this as one of my key games back in August, but Cal travels to Pitt. Pitt 3.5-point favorite, opened up still 3.5 at the Circa. Good afternoon to Mr. Benson and Mr. Stevens with a 58 there. It was a 59.5. Their little money coming in towards the under there. I think there's going to be some points here. The problem is, can both teams get to that 30-point mark, Ron?
Yeah, I think there'll be some points in this game as well. Big questions for Cal is, number one, they haven't blamed the refs last week on the Miami of Florida with 5 offensive linemen beyond the line of scrimmage. But more than that, Cal, it shouldn't have come down to that. Cal had a gigantic lead in that game and let it slip away. So they can't blame it just on the last thing. They have to recover from that and go cross country. And we don't know the status of Ott, their fine running back, who caught a lot of passes and played last week. But for some unknown reason, this 1,000-yard runner has only had 3 carries last week. That's not good. Pitt's firing on all cylinders. I like what they're doing. They have some good running data, but power rating rise, I think the line is correct. It's even. I think Pitt is not really a 5-0 type team. The record says 5-0. They're more like a 3-2 team in my eyes. I don't have a play in this game. I probably would lean Pitt because of all the moving parts that are going on and all the travel going on with Cal.
Let me get to let me see here. Keep going. This number intrigues me here. Let's go to Wisconsin Rutgers here. And Rutgers opened up 1.5-point favorites with a 40, now 2.5. Wisconsin, surprisingly, has done okay this year. You know, they get steamrolled second half by Alabama. They've held their own. Now they got to travel to a upstart Rutgers team here as a favorite against Wisconsin, which we don't see very often, Ron.
Yeah, you know, Rutgers has the pedigree for this matchup to perform better than they did, for example, last week against Nebraska. I didn't like Rutgers last week for a couple of different reasons. Number one, Nebraska's defense was going to wreak havoc on Rutgers' quarterback, who came from Minnesota, was lightly regarded by me at Minnesota, and he's still lightly regarded by me at Rutgers. I don't think that's the right transfer that Rutgers should have had in that situation. And Rutgers' kicking game is just not that good. Let's put it that way. It's to the level of Nebraska, and they went 0 for 1 last week. They're below 50% in terms of kicking field goals. So you worry about that. But Wisconsin, even though they have the kicking edge, and that kicking edge will keep me off the game, but I do think Rutgers deserves to be the favorite in this game because they're going to frustrate Wisconsin's offense. And I think Rutgers running back, they're fine running back. I mean, when you can run for over 1,000 yards at Rutgers, knowing they haven't had a viable quarterback option for what? During his whole tenure there, 5, 6, 7 years, they haven't had a viable quarterback option. Yet Pacheco ran crazy at Rutgers, which translated to the NFL. And this running back that they have now, I think he has back-to-back 1,000-yard years, at least one. He's going to grind out some yards. He's not afraid to carry the ball 20 times. I would project that he would have over 100 yards. Rutgers is going to shorten the game. Hopefully it won't come down to kicking for Rutgers, but I do give them the edge by about the spread.
Before I get to the big two that we're going to go against, you talked about BYU. They're facing Arizona. Over the opening number was BYU 3.5 with a 49.5. It has stayed the same here. Now, this Arizona team last year shocked the world. A decent, some turnover, but a good program here. I know in May, June, July, I did not have BYU as the favorite in this spot here. BYU, as you said, has had an amazing start to the year. Justified on the 3.5-point favorite at home here, Ron?
Yeah, the line's pretty much correct. Interesting and maybe controversial thought on my end. I think the bye for BYU is not good for them. They have such momentum and they're doing so well, and they didn't really, as far as I know, it's hard to check injuries these days because NCAA schools are so secretive about that. But I think BYU's momentum could stall just a little, and they're going to face a really good quarterback and a really, really good wide receiver in McMillan, who had 300-yard game already, had a 162-yard game last week. So I've been wrong on BYU too. It's very rare that somebody makes my bottom 5 coaches list for the season and either doesn't get fired because 3 out of 5 get fired, but absolutely climbs out of it. So hats off to Sataki and the BYU program. I can't play this game because I've been wrong on BYU, and I don't want to. I don't know that I've had any plays on or against them, but I've been wrong in terms of how I saw their season go. They're 5-0, and I had them with 5 wins for the whole year. So they're already on that particular number. If I had to, I would lean with Arizona, but I don't have enough things in my arsenal. I don't have the hard data to back it up. I don't want to bet a game just because it's on a feeling, but I would lean Arizona, but I'm convinced that BYU has outperformed my expectations.
All right, I'm going to go to the two big games here. Oklahoma, Texas at the Cotton Bowl. Texas opened up 15-point favorites with a 51.5, now 14 with a 49. I say this, I trust and respect opening numbers. 15.5, Ron, the opening number. There's only one way that number could go, and it did. It went to 14. They're staying on 14, which you and I both know is a key number here. Listen, I once a team gets to number one, close your eyes because it's been carnage here. This Texas team, both sides of the ball have been an absolute wagon here. But just outside looking in, Ron, that looks like too many points to me.
Typically in rivalry games, especially those Thanksgiving rivalry games, you see points shaved off the number. You say, okay, my power ratings say the number should be 10, but the line is 7.5, 8, because it's that great rivalry at the end of the year, the USC UCLA games, the Michigan Ohio States, and so on. You don't usually see the true power rated number. In this case, it's interesting because that's pretty much the true power rated number, about 14.5, 15. So 14, it's right in range. So they're not giving a discount for the underdog in this game, which tells you how good they think Texas is. But Oklahoma has performed very, very well defensively, especially. And they changed quarterbacks, I think, a week or so ago because they wanted to get more oomph out of the offense. And that's going to be key to them, how Oklahoma performs against the Texas pass defense. On paper, it looks like a lower scoring game to me, which scares me a little because some of those games have been shootouts in this rivalry. But it looks a little bit lower scoring. I like what Oklahoma is doing on defense. I like what Texas is doing on defense. Revenge game for Texas from last year, which is a complete back and forth game last year. Texas place kicking, their kicker has not been up to par, which is unusual for Texas. 2 out of 5 kicking the ball so far. I think this game boils down to how well the Oklahoma quarterback performs against the Texas defense. No play for me on this game. Curious who breaks through because I really like both defenses in this game.
I read a tweet, I think yesterday or maybe today, that Ewers is healthy. He is back. Will that be a change in the offense? I mean, Manning came in and did an amazing job. They got the best 1-2 punch at quarterback there, but Ewers is back.
Yeah. The only thing is if he looks tentative at the beginning, and he might because Oklahoma is a really good defense. But there's so many weapons on Texas. Not necessarily. I know they're running for a nice yards per carry right now, but they lost their top 2 running backs to injury earlier in the year. Maybe one of them comes back. So they're kind of overachieving on the run offense. It's really about Oklahoma going against some NFL caliber type wide receivers. I think this game will be won or lost by the pass as opposed to the run.
Well, I can't get you out of college without asking the game of the night, 7:30. Ohio State travels to Oregon. We never, ever see Oregon as a home dog here. Ohio State opened up 4-point favorites with a 51.5. Now a flat 3 with a 53.5 here. So they're betting the home Ducks in Oregon, and they are actually spreading a little money here on the over 53.5, Ron.
Yeah, so obviously a great game. You've got a quarterback hitting almost 80% for Oregon. You've got a wide receiver, I think his name is Tez Johnson, who's really an elite running back. They got a running back, James, who's really good. The defense is fine. It's not fantastic. It's fine. It's actually right exactly on my projections. So Oregon's doing all the things they need to do, yet they're a home dog. And I think the reason Ohio State, while the line is correct according to my power ratings, the reason I favor Ohio State in this game is because Chip Kelly is there and he's diversified the offense. I know they got Smith, the new 17-year-old phenom at wide receiver, plus they have a veteran wide receiver there too. but they have such amazing run pass balance, corrected for sacks, 6.4 yards per carry. The big question is, what does Will Howard bring to the table? I've heard a lot of people saying that wasn't a great move to get Will Howard. He did this, he did that. But the bottom line is Will Howard has a lot of college experience. People say he hasn't played in big games. Well, he hasn't played in big games of this stature, but he has played in big games. I mean, at Kansas State and others, he was asked to try to get them to title games and win some bowl games and so on. He's played in some big games. You have Jim Knowles as defensive coordinator. I don't know if you could be underrated if you look at that, but I think Ohio State's the best team in the nation. And I really do think that Oregon, even though they had a hiccup a little bit the first couple of games where they didn't perform that well, I think they've kind of found their stride. They're okay. Not as explosive maybe as we thought they'd be, but this is a tough assignment for them, even at home. Maybe if they get the home momentum early, that helps, but I think Ohio State's the better team.
Before we transition to the NFL, anyone watching, we got standing room only and not following Ron, head on over to Twitter, X at Ron A Sports. Please go give him a follow there. With your numbers, with your power rankings, is there anything in pocket or a lean that you might be able to give to everyone watching and listening in the call?
I got a late start this week, so I'm not going to be able to help too much. I like to try to, by this time each week, I like to narrow it down to the top 10 or 12 games. I've usually played 5 or 6 already. I'm waiting for numbers on the other. I have 21 games still on my list that I have to decide player pass, where it's going, and so on. So I don't have a lot of plays, I think, in just some situational plays. You want to hold your nose play for the audience. I took UMass at 28 points against Missouri. There's your hold your nose play. I mean, I could be right in the gutter after that one, but situationally, I don't see how Missouri in an SEC sandwich game coming off a loss to A&M, I don't see what the motivation is for getting up to a UMass team that sometimes can put a few points on the board.
I like those hold my nose. I got one of those tonight for the ECSI VIPs.
Yeah, I mean, did you think your audience was going to hear about UMass today?
Transition NFL. When you go all in on a coach or you go all in on a certain player, let's say a quarterback, it usually doesn't end well. And of course, I'm talking about the Jets and Aaron Rodgers here. Couple weeks ago, we were dancing around saying, wow, he looks great against the Patriots. They're back. This is going to be an AFC championship team, maybe Super Bowl contender. The only thing we didn't see that game was the discount double check there. Then the following Sunday, they lose in a rainy, sloppy game to Denver 10-9. Then you start to hear the whispers. Oh, he got out coached by Sean Payton. And of course, none of it was Rodgers' fault. Traveled to London against an undefeated Minnesota team, the Sam Darnold revenge game there. Rodgers looked like excuse my French, he looked like ass. I thought he did. He left a lot of plays. He's blaming this guy, blaming that guy. They brought Hackett over. They had Cobb last year for him. They got Lazard. They leave London with a loss. So Robert Saleh starts to bring the team together, or I should say the coaching staff together. And Mr. Hackett, I think we're going to remove you from your play calling duties. Well, next thing you know, Rodgers and Woody on the phone. Next thing you know, Saleh outside looking in, gets fired. Biggest game of the year, obviously Monday night against Buffalo. Talk about the train wreck going on in New York right now.
Yeah, there's a lot you can try to unpack in this particular one. Rodgers, to his credit, said he could have played better after the game in London, and there's no question about that. This is what you get when you try to back a Rodgers team. You get a team that defensively is probably in the top 3 to 5 in the league, and all they're asking Rodgers to do is pull out games at the end that he's pulled out for 10, 12 years. They got a real break when Aaron Jones went out of the game because that was Darnold's security blanket. That's what made, in my opinion, and what I've been saying all season long, Darnold was going to thrive if he had a running game to take the pressure off him. But if he doesn't have Aaron Jones and he's asked to do too much passing, there's going to be some bad habits that fall back to what he's done in the past. That game for the Jets was there for the taking. They had plenty of chances, not only in the red zone, but at least on that end of the field, even at the end of the game to pull it out. They didn't get it done, and Rodgers didn't get it done. And now you're absolutely right. This is a game for first place in the AFC East. And Buffalo, they've got some problems moving forward. They've got a tougher schedule. They got the first place schedule. They got some concerns defensively. I heard their running back Cook is a little bit banged up as well. They're trying to feel their way through some brand new wide receivers. The Jets need to capitalize right now, and all this drama is making it a little bit less likely that they could take care of business here. I think the Jets, if I knew what was inside Rodgers' head at any given moment, well, first of all, my head would explode if I knew that. So I'm not going in that route. It's like trying to get into Jerry Jones' head or something. I won't go in that direction. But I think the Jets are the right side in this game. That's a lot of trust you got to put on Aaron Rodgers to really get back his old mojo and to look at, how to carry this team and how to be Aaron Rodgers, the leader, instead of Aaron Rodgers, the apologist. Because if we see true Aaron Rodgers, the leader, this is a game they could win.
And this, you talk about the perfect storm here, Ron. Back in the day before, 20,000 million websites and all these, how should I say this correctly? Depends on who you follow in social media. You got the Bills who started 3-0 on a third straight road game. They lose in Buffalo. They lose a hard-fought game in Houston. Now this is their third straight road game. And you got the Jets, who are struggling now and just fired their coach. Yet the line opened up at 1.5, Buffalo favorite, now 2.5, and it hasn't moved.
Yeah, actually it was 3 at one point. I know that because that's the number I got. And it may not have touched 3 for that long, but that number was high to me. I think I got it before the firing, because there's already, I think you could have got a soft 3 or 2.5 with it was already 2.5 minus 115 minus 120. Then it was starting to come down because my power rating said that the number really should have been 1. So I would have made Buffalo 1. I don't know how to handicap the drama, so I'm not really going to try. I just need to know exactly what's the roster going to look like from Buffalo? What's the injury report going to look like from Buffalo after Friday's injury reports come out? And then we need to know what's going on with Rodgers. But it's a fair number. Certainly 3 to me is a fair number. It's such an important game that at some point attention is going to go away. The media attention, everybody's going to talk on Monday Night Football about what's going on, but the players should be focusing on the game by the time it's Monday night.
You talked to me last year. You've talked for the last 2 years about the rest, and we talk about a team called Kansas City who last year couldn't get out of their way to start the year. And you kept telling me, Jeff, this team is almost rest deficiency against their opponent every week. This team loses Pacheco, loses Hollywood Brown, loses Rashee Rice, yet they're 5-0 and got a bye. The rebirth of Kareem Hunt, the rebirth of Juju Smith-Schuster. Now they get to sit back, get fat, have a bye here. The AFC, the NFL, I think we're in trouble here. Am I correct?
Well, Kansas City is 5-0 and their power rating has not changed one bit from beginning to end for me, because all they've done is take care of business, because they were able to convert 4th and 16 on a penalty to Cincinnati. They had a couple of plays go their way opening week. They're doing enough to win because they're a very professional, well-coached organization with a fine, more than fine defensive coordinator, obviously, with Steve Spagnuolo. So they've got the pieces. They won't have the same rest disadvantages they had last year. That actually transfers over to San Francisco, who's going to be at a rest disadvantage 7 or 8 times this year. So I'm not worried about Kansas City, but they're not a super team for the reasons you said. They're not as good roster-wise. You didn't mention the fact that Snead, their best cover corner, is now in Tennessee. So they're short their best cover corner. They're short their best wide receiver. They're short their best and their running angry running back. They have Chris Jones, who's healthy and happy, and that does help this year. But they're not as good as last year, but they're the best team in football record-wise, and everybody else has to find a way to beat Kansas City, or we're going to see them in January and February.
As Russell Saylor says, or as Fezzik is fond of saying, they have God as QB. And as the Philly Godfather told me on Radio Row at the Super Bowl last year in Vegas, you can't quantify greatness. He talked about Michael Jordan. He talked about Mayweather. He talked about Tom Brady. And now we're talking about Patrick Mahomes. You can't put a number on greatness, Ron.
No, I mean, if he has to, he's not a running quarterback, but if the game is on the line, he always gets your first down for you. He finds a way because he has that sense. It's bred in the family. His dad was a pitcher and so on. He just has that vision and sense as to where to go and what to do and when to make that move. And a lot of that can't be taught. And Mahomes just has it instinctively.
We had Brady Tinker on earlier this week at DFW Sports Beat. Good friend and colleague, does a lot of work with the Cowboys and inside information with the Chiefs here. I'll give you 3 wide receivers. We're talking about Devontae Adams, who Kansas City actually offered the 2nd-round pick, but the Raiders don't want to trade amongst the division. He talked about DeAndre Hopkins, who spent a lot of time there in Kansas City before he decided to go to Tennessee. And Amari Cooper makes the most sense, only a $600,000 hit on the cap. The reason the D-Hop would help them, as Brady said, is it's a 2-year deal this year and next year. And when you talk about Racey Rice going to be out all year, he's not going to be ready till about week 4 next year. Then the NFL is going to come in with a 4, 6, 8 game suspension on him, basically out for next year as well. When you look at the long term there, how does Amari Cooper or a D-Hop fit into that offense?
Yeah, I'm worried about the way D-Hawk has been playing last year and this year, but he'd probably thrive in Kansas City because of that innovativeness, that offense, and Pat Mahomes. Hey, Smith-Schuster had a great game last. He revived himself. And the thing about Hopkins and Schuster is they also have good hands for the catch, and that was missing and is missing from what's still on Kansas City's roster. So you worry about drops. A guy like Hopkins could solve that. He's not for all teams. I think Cooper absolutely should and could be traded because Cleveland, they've got their own set of problems right now. They need to recoup draft picks. They're going to have a number 1 pick last year. I hear they're tight against the salary cap because Watson's being paid $70 million. I think Cooper goes somewhere. So that's something to look at. Adams, to me, Buffalo should make a big play for him ahead of the Jets. I don't think, and Adams isn't going to Kansas City for the reasons you said. That would be pretty silly trading in the division.
Patriots, worst offensive line potentially in history. Enough's enough. I mean, you talk about the circus here. If you were going to start Drake May, you could at least put him into the second half of the Miami game, which they didn't do. You could have waited till Thursday or Friday, not to give Houston a couple extra days to prepare for May. Or better yet, you could have waited till you went to London next week. This Drake May assertion is not going to do butt kiss, but thoughts on Drake May starting for the Pats?
Well, the problem here is that Brissett, the starting quarterback, you know exactly what you're getting from him. He has a relatively low floor and a relatively low ceiling. I mean, the guy doesn't stretch the field. He aims his passes. He's relatively careful, but not a high pass. There's nothing to prepare for Brissett. You know what you're getting, and New England's just trying to shorten the games. There's never an ideal situation to bring in a quarterback like Drake May behind this offensive line. That's a problem. He's going to have to rely on Hunter Henry and a bunch of others, bigger targets, so that he could get the ball to them. Might as well start him off now because he's your quarterback of the future, and then do whatever you can in free agency in the draft next year to fortify the offensive line so that you could keep Drake May upright, which is your number one goal. New England, they're going to have to run the ball, and they're going to have to run the ball effectively against Houston to get it done. New England's defense is holding up fairly well under the circumstances. C.J. Stroud didn't have the cleanest of games last week, and he's going to be without Nico Collins. So maybe New England can play with them a little bit, but overall, you'd say it's going to be a learning year for Drake May. Do not expect miracles.
Before we get to your closing thoughts here, got you working a little OT here, but that's all right. We got standing room only here. Great game tonight, great divisional game. A couple teams struggling. San Francisco traveling to Seattle. As high as a 4-point opening line down to 3.5. Around a 48.5, I think, 49 in the total. Expecting a lot of points. I'm expecting a lot of back and forth action. Seattle did the Circus Survivor dirty last week, losing outright to the Giants. Giants take the ball on their opening drive, 7-8 minute drive. No neighbors, no problem there. They just look lackluster. They had come off that game against the Lions, who now opponents facing the Lions the following week are now 0-4. And in comes a San Francisco team that I put an asterisk next to this one, as they too did the Circus Survivor dirty. Big lead against the Cardinals, but lost their field goal kicker. And that whole second half, they're moving the ball, and then they got that square peg round hole where they can't kick a field goal, but they can't punt, so they had to go for it. And Murray and company found a way not only to come back to cover the game, but win the game. Thoughts on tonight's game, Ron, with the 49ers traveling to Seattle in a short week?
For as innovative as San Francisco is, and with the weapons of Deebo Samuel and Ayuk and George Kittle, and anybody can run behind that, in a Shanahan offense, everybody can run. But still, I guess we now know how important McCaffrey was to this team, because they're not closing things out, and he's such a good pass catcher, blocker. I mean, he's the complete player, and they miss him a little bit, and it did affect their play calling, not only the loss of the kicker, but they didn't finish drives. Both teams have been exposed recently. We knew Seattle was going to be exposed after 3 weeks because they hadn't played a real quarterback yet. And then they got really exposed week 4, and they couldn't close the deal. Really, the Giants outplayed them from start to finish, even with that 100-yard return, which set the Giants back 7-0. The Giants won that game fair and square. So I think both teams defensively, especially against the pass, they're vulnerable. I'd like to see Geno Smith come out with a little more urgency, or maybe Seattle's offense come out with a little more urgency. Because it just seems like every time I see Seattle in prime time, they're behind, and then they're playing catch up, and sometimes they catch up and sometimes they don't. My numbers favor Seattle in this game. We know San Francisco already has a couple of divisional losses. Can you imagine San Francisco after week 6 being 3 losses inside the division? That's not what we expected, and there's some tough rest differential disadvantages for San Francisco down the road. So conventional wisdom would kind of say maybe we should take San Francisco in this game, but my numbers say take Seattle. So maybe we get a real close game that ends in a field goal. The 3.5 looks good. A great opportunity for Seattle. The question is, do they have enough defensively to close the deal? And can their offensive line seal off Bosa from wreaking havoc against their quarterback, Geno Smith?
It's funny because I was watching the Kansas City game, And I'm comparing Mahomes to Purdy here in this regard. Kansas City, when's the last time you saw 7 trips to the red zone and just 1 touchdown? And Purdy and the offense has moved the ball great from 20 to 20. And the difference between last year and this year is the red zone efficiency. And everyone's blaming it on McCaffrey not being there. But Mason's done a hell of a job filling in for McCaffrey.
Yeah, he does, but he doesn't offer the pass catching component. And you can, therefore, in obvious passing down situations, take one of your linebackers and not worry about Mason. And even if he catches it, he's not going to make the moves with the instincts that McCaffrey had. So I think in passing down situations, it's a definite difference with McCaffrey not on the field.
Well, as we always close out this show, I give you that beautiful 7-yard button hook here for Ron's closing thoughts.
Okay. I have a playoff article on Wager Talk that talks about where the NCAA playoff picture is right now. So I encourage everybody to take a look at that. Look at the different scenarios that I've put out for the ACC, for the Big Ten, for the Big 12, for the SEC, for Notre Dame, and so on. It's up running at Wager Talk. You can find the article. You can look at X, Twitter, and you can click on the link I have to that article. The other thing I want to say, Jeff, is that I think it's Ashton Junty of Boise State, who's now the Heisman favorite to win that particular award. And he's nothing short of fantastic, 180 yards and just a half action. He just saw a half of a game. He didn't even play in the second half last week. And he's not going to face a lot of stiff competition. So the question is, should we hand him the Heisman? I know a lot of people got him at 10-1 and 12-1, and now he's maybe 2-1 or 3-1 in terms of getting that Heisman trophy. I don't think he's going to win the Heisman. That's kind of a bold take. There's still a lot of time for one of the quarterbacks of one of the top teams to emerge. I think Colorado's two-way player, Hunter, I think he has an excellent chance to unseat Junty and be the non-quarterback favorite to win the Heisman. Watch his play against Kansas State this week and see what else Colorado does if they string out some wins. Maybe if Boise goes undefeated, yes, he wins the Heisman, but I just don't think the level of competition and the Heisman voters who are going to be partial to the Big Ten, and they're going to be partial to the two-way player Hunter, and they're going to be partial to the SEC. I think it might be a false favorite, even though I think he's a fantastic talent. So that's kind of my take on the Heisman. It's not usually a market that I get into, but that's the kind of way that I would look in terms of handicapping the Heisman race.
Well, I know this. I was ahead of the game a few weeks ago. Looked like a genius, of course, at Jalen Milroe plus 750 before the Georgia game, goes to the favorite at 250, and then the following week loses to Vanderbilt. So again, I like what you're saying here, because there's a lot of football left in this, some teams in the weeds here. And as we talked about early in the show, there's going to be a lot of teams knocking each other off and a lot of shift. And Coach Prime and Primetime has done an amazing job this year with this Buffalo team, and a win this week against number 18 K-State. Again, you will be hearing the Sanders name. We'll be hearing Travis Hunter. And I know my Patriots, and there's some local beat writers that are trying to position themselves. Oh, we're taking Travis Hunter here with two-way player, blah, 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 blah. So it'll be interesting as the season progresses. We do know one thing: the Patriots will keep losing, right, Ron?
Let's hope so, because we had that live bet a long time ago, right when you were with me on the show. And you mentioned Fezzik, or Russell mentioned Fezzik. He put on his show, so I'm going to give a tip out to him too, because I like to be innovative on that. I like to be the first on this, but I was the second on this. He mentioned that one of the offshore books had a 6.5 on New England after they upset Cincinnati. And I looked through the schedule and said, I don't see 7 wins. So there's an extra ticket on New England under 6.5 in my arsenal too. And thanks for pointing that out.
I want to give a shout out to Mr. Russell Saylor, as always, who's always here to join us. Thank you for all the love and support, Mr. Saylor. By the way, I heard Anthony Richardson looks great this week, so hopefully he'll come back. Tough game this week against Tennessee, assuming Jonathan Taylor will be out. Looks like Michael Pittman will be out for a few weeks as well. You got some wide receivers over there. Josh Downs, hopefully he plays. Alec Pierce has been great as well. And you got a good backup quarterback named Joe Flacco as well. So don't worry about that as well. So go ahead, Ron.
No, I was saying Joe Flacco gave an amazing interview on SiriusXM this week. Just a wonderful listen about all the things that he processes, how he prepares, and so on. It was just fantastic. Matchup analysis, which is part of my analysis, you have to wait for the Friday injury report so that you know Anthony Richardson versus Joe Flacco, completely different skill sets. I'm not even handicapping the game until I know exactly whose quarterback is in. And that's what you have to do. Watch the Friday injury report, unfortunately, these days, and then finish your matchup analysis.
Yeah, Russell's been pushing for this all week. He says, have Richardson line up as a wide receiver until we figure that out. So thank everyone. Standing room only. If you haven't, please take 2 seconds, jump on over to YouTube at East Coast Sports Investors. Subscribe. It's free. Go follow Ron, as always, at Ron A Sports. Ron, your written work, tell them where you can go find that as well.
So I mentioned that my NCAA playoff article, what I see in each conference, is up at wagertalk.com. How I handicap the 12-team playoff race right now. So take a look at that. It could all change. If I had made that article a week earlier before the Tennessee A&M and Alabama losses, it may, or Missouri, it may have looked a little bit different. But after this week, I sort of handicapped the races and put some thoughts together there. Other than that, we'll just keep doing the shows. I'll appear on the different venues with Chris, with Ted, with you. Great weekend of football, so enjoy the weekend.
From myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest, the one and only Mr. Ron Marmalefsky at Ron A Sports. Go find his work at Wager Talk there. Tomorrow, 11 a.m., the NCAA Insiders, Matt Grissom and Quentin Mills will be breaking down some college football for us. I will be a guest at 10 a.m. with Andrew McGinnis at McGinnis Picks at Wager Talk as well. Everyone, have a great, great day. Enjoy some Major League Baseball playoffs. And then, of course, we got the NFL, San Fran at Seattle, and a little college football as well. Everyone, have a great, great day. Enjoy yourselves. Stay in your lane, and we'll see you soon.